My dad replaced my dead mom in 3 months. Katherine erased all her photos. Now they're suing for rights to my son, but I got a restraining order and left them speechless. I'm 25 years old. I work in digital marketing, and I need to get this story off my chest because what happened with my father and his wife basically forced me to take legal action to protect my family. And there are still people who think I'm the bad guy here. I guess I should start at the beginning, when my mom died, because that's where everything went to hell. I mean, literally everything. I was 14 when my mom lost her battle with cancer. It was ovarian cancer. Stage 4 when they detected it, and it lasted about a year and a half from diagnosis until she passed away. I'm not going to go into details about that year and a half, because honestly it was the worst time of my life, and it still hurts to think about it. But what I can say is that my mom was my favorite person in the world. You know, that person who understands you without you saying anything, who knows exactly what to say when you're down, who supports you in everything. My dad, Gregory, was also devastated, or so it seemed at the time. He cried at the funeral. He'd stare at photos of her for hours. The guy seemed genuinely broken. I thought, well, at least we're in this together. Dad and I are going to get through this together. Turns out, no. 3 months after the funeral, literally 3 months, my dad sat me down in the living room and told me he'd met someone, a coworker named Katherine. He said she had been supporting him a lot during his grief, that she understood him, that he needed to move forward with his life. I was 14 years old. I had just lost my mom and this guy was already dating someone. I told him it seemed very fast and he got all defensive, saying things like, "Your mom would have wanted me to be happy and I can't stay trapped in the past." I stayed quiet because, what was I going to say? I was a kid dealing with my own pain, and my dad was basically telling me he had already moved on. Katherine appeared in my life like a hurricane. 4 months after they started dating, she had already moved into our house. Our house. The house where I grew up, where my mom cooked, where we celebrated Christmas, where everything still smelled like her. And suddenly there was this strange woman rearranging the furniture, changing things around, acting like it was her home. I tried to be polite, honestly, because my dad seemed happy and I didn't want to be the bitter teenager, but Katherine had this energy I didn't like. She was very effusive, very in your face, always trying to hug me or touch my shoulder, asking me about school with that fake tone you use with little kids even though I was already 15 by then. What happened on my 15th birthday was the first big conflict. My dad and Katherine organized a surprise dinner, invited some relatives, the typical thing. I was there trying to have a good time, blowing out the candles on the cake that Katherine had made, which didn't taste anything like the cakes my mom made, by the way, when my dad stood up with a glass of wine and said he had an announcement. Everyone started clapping and congratulating them, and I just sat there feeling how my chest tightened more and more until I literally couldn't breathe well. I got up, walked over to where the cake was, grabbed it with both hands and flipped it over on the table. Cake everywhere, frosting on the tablecloth, candles going out on the floor. Katherine screamed. My dad yelled at me. I left the house and didn't come back for 3 days. I stayed at a friend's house whose parents were cool and didn't ask too many questions. When I returned, my dad was furious but also kind of scared, I think, because he'd never seen me explode like that. He told me he understood I was going through a difficult time, but that was no way to behave. I told him maybe he shouldn't have announced his engagement on my birthday, barely, a year after Mom died. He went quiet after that, but the worst, the absolutely worst, came later. One day I came home from school, and the house looked different. All the photos of my mom had disappeared. All of them. The ones in the living room, in the dining room, in the hallway. Even the one in my room. Yes, they entered my room while I wasn't there. Her personal things, her books, her plants that I had been taking care of, everything disappeared. It was like my mom had never existed. I found Katherine in the kitchen, making dinner like nothing happened, and I asked her where my mom's things were. She told me, with that sweet and condescending voice she used, that my dad and she had decided it was time to make space for new memories, that keeping all those things wasn't healthy, that we needed to move forward as a family. I yelled at her. I yelled that she wasn't my family. that she had no right to touch my mom's things, that she had no right to be in our house. My dad arrived in the middle of my yelling and sent me to my room. Later, he came up and told me Katherine was trying to help, that I was being cruel to her, that I needed to give her a chance. I asked him where Mom's things were, and he told me they had stored them in the attic. I went up to the attic that night and found everything stuffed in cardboard boxes. Like trash. Like things that didn't matter. I took all the photos I could find and hid them under my bed. The next few years were a constant battle. Katherine constantly tried to get me to call her mom. Constantly. She'd say things like, "I know it's difficult, but I'm here for you. You can call me Mom if you want," or she'd try to get my dad to force me by telling him I didn't respect her. My dad would sit me down and give me these speeches about respecting Katherine, about how she was trying so hard to be a good stepmother, about how I should be grateful to have someone who cared about me. I'd tell him over and over that I already had a mom, that she was dead, but she was still my mom, and that Katherine was never going to replace her. He'd get frustrated and say I was being childish, that I needed to grow up. The only thing that kept me sane during those years was knowing I'd eventually go to college. I counted the days, literally had a calendar where I marked the days until my 18th birthday. When that day finally came, I had everything planned. I had applied to universities far from home. I had gotten scholarships. I had saved money from part-time jobs. The day after my birthday, I packed my things, including all the photos and memories of my mom I had saved, and left. My dad tried to stop me, said I was making a mistake, that college could wait, that we needed to fix our relationship first. I told him there was nothing to fix because he had chosen Katherine over me years ago. College was my escape. I met new people, made friends who didn't know my family history. I could be myself without the constant pressure of Katherine trying to be my mom. I kept minimal contact with my dad, like I'd send him a message for Christmas and birthdays, nothing more. He tried to call me often at first, but eventually gave up and respected my distance, or so it seemed. In my second year of college, I met Elizabeth. She was studying nursing. She was, and is, the most understanding and empathetic person I've ever met. I told her about my mom, about my dad and Katherine, about everything. She never judged, never pressured me to reconcile with them, just supported me. We became best friends. Then we started dating, and after 2 years together, I proposed. She said yes, obviously, and I was happier than I'd been in years. I called my dad to tell him. I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe this could be a new beginning or something. Wrong. I told him I was getting married, that Elizabeth was amazing, that I was very excited. He got happy, said he wanted to meet her, that Katherine and he would want to come to the wedding. I told him sure, he could come, but Katherine wasn't welcome. He got serious and told me Katherine was his wife, that they were a package deal, that I couldn't ask him not to bring his wife to my wedding. I told him then, don't come. He hung up the phone. 2 days later, Katherine posted on Facebook a photo of me from when I was like 10 years old, and a long text about how proud she was of her son, how she couldn't believe her baby was getting married, how she was going to be a grandmother soon. Elizabeth and I weren't even pregnant yet. She just assumed. My friends started sending me screenshots asking what was up, if that was my mom. I got so angry, like an anger I hadn't felt in years. I commented on her post, publicly, saying my mother died when I was 14 years old. Katherine is my father's wife and does not have permission to call herself my mother or to post photos of me. Delete this. Huge drama ensued. Relatives were messaging me saying I'd been too harsh, that Katherine was just excited, that I should apologize. My dad called me yelling, saying I had publicly humiliated Katherine, that she was crying, that I was ungrateful. I told him if he ever allowed Katherine to call herself my mother again, I would never speak to him again. He said he couldn't control what Katherine posted on her own Facebook. I told him then I wouldn't speak to either of them ever again, and I kept my word. 3 years of complete silence. I blocked them both on all social media, blocked their numbers, didn't respond to emails, nothing. Elizabeth and I got married in a small ceremony with our closest friends and her family. It was perfect, honestly. No drama, no Katherine trying to get attention, no my dad making everything awkward. I got a good job after graduating. Elizabeth did too. We moved to a city about 3 hours from where I grew up. I thought I finally had peace. 8 months ago, Elizabeth got pregnant. We were so excited, like we'd been trying for a while, and it finally happened. We didn't tell many people at first, just close family. Her family. Not mine, and close friends. I don't know how my dad and Katherine found out, but they found out. Maybe some distant relative told them. I have no idea. But they knew. One afternoon, Elizabeth was home because she was already in her 8th month and working from home. I got home from work, and there was a car parked in our driveway. My dad's car. My stomach dropped. I went into the house, and there they were, my dad and Katherine, sitting in my living room with Elizabeth, who looked super uncomfortable. Katherine got up when she saw me and tried to hug me, telling me how much she'd missed me, how much she wanted to meet her grandson. I backed away and asked her how the hell they had found my address. My dad said it hadn't been difficult, that I was his son and he had a right to know where his son lived. I told them to leave. Katherine started crying, saying they just wanted to be part of the baby's life, that they had made mistakes but deserved a second chance, that she loved me like I was her own son. That phrase, like I was her own son, set me off. I told her I wasn't her son, that I never had been, that she had helped erase my mom from my life and I was never going to forgive her for that. My dad stood up and started yelling that I was still a resented child, that I needed to get over the past, that my mom would have wanted me to be happy and forgive. I told him not to use my mom to justify his actions, to get out of my house, and that if they showed up again without invitation, I'd call the police. They left, but not before Katherine left a bag full of gifts for the baby in my living room. Clothes, toys, a hand-knitted blanket. Elizabeth wanted to keep some things because they were nice and expensive, but I threw everything in the trash. I didn't want anything from them in my house. I thought that would be the end. But no. A week later, we found out they had bought a house. 5 minutes. From ours. 5 minutes. Elizabeth found the sale announcement on Facebook. She hadn't blocked them because she'd never added them. Where Katherine was posting photos of their new house, saying things like, "So excited to be close to our son," and "our future grandson." I couldn't believe it. They had literally moved their entire life to be close to us. They started showing up more often. Katherine would post photos of me from when I was a kid on Facebook, without my permission, with captions like "my beautiful son," or remembering when my Jordan was little. I'd report them and get them deleted, but she kept posting more. I finally blocked them from absolutely everything, but the damage was already done because she had already shared my private life with hundreds of her Facebook friends. Things escalated when they showed up again, this time with more gifts. An expensive crib, a stroller, more clothes. They rang the doorbell around 8 p.m. Elizabeth opened the door because she thought it was the food delivery we had ordered, and there they were. I came down the stairs and told them to leave immediately. Katherine insisted they just wanted to help, that they knew a baby was expensive, that they could provide for their grandson. I told her it wasn't their grandson, that it never would be, that they needed to leave now. My dad refused, said they weren't leaving until we talked like adults. I called the police. When the patrol arrived, the situation was tense. Katherine was crying, saying they just wanted to see their family. My dad was arguing they had a right to be there. I was explaining to the officer that they had shown up uninvited after I'd told them multiple times they weren't welcome. The officer asked them to leave and warned them about harassment, but basically said he couldn't do much more unless they did something illegal. They left, but Katherine yelled at me that I was going to regret keeping them away from her grandson. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from a Nephinant lawyer. My dad and Katherine were requesting family mediation, saying they wanted to establish visitation rights for the baby before it was even born. Visitation rights. For a baby that hadn't even been born yet. For grandparents, I had made very clear I didn't want in my life. I called a lawyer and they told me they probably didn't have a case, especially because there was no established relationship, but that I should still take preventive measures. They showed up a third time. This time I was ready. I had my phone set up to record as soon as I opened the door. They rang the doorbell. I opened it with the camera recording, and there they were again with more gifts. I told them, on camera, that I had already told them they weren't welcome, that I had called the police last time, that this constituted harassment. Katherine tried to push the door to get in, saying she just wanted to talk, that it was ridiculous, I wouldn't let her see her grandson. My dad tried to reason with me, saying the baby deserved to have grandparents, that I was denying him that, because of my selfishness. Everything was recorded. With that video and the records of previous police calls, my lawyer helped me file for a restraining order. It was temporarily approved while we waited for the hearing. The order basically prohibited them from coming within 100 meters of my house, my work, or any place where I was. My dad sent me an email, which my lawyer said to save as evidence, saying he couldn't believe I had gone that far, that I was destroying any chance of reconciliation, that my mom would be disappointed in me. That last part hurt more than I want to admit, because the truth is, I don't know what my mom would think about all this. I don't know if she'd be proud that I'm protecting her memories and my family, or if she'd think I'm being too harsh. But what I do know is that my mom never would have wanted to be erased from my life. She never would have wanted someone else to take her place as if she had never mattered. And that's exactly what Katherine tried to do. My lawyer says we have a solid case with all the documented harassment, the uninvited appearances, the attempt to force entry into my house. Elizabeth is completely on my side, says our priority is to protect our baby from people who don't respect boundaries. Her family also supports us. They've treated me like a son from the beginning and have never pressured me to reconcile with my dad. The baby is due in 3 weeks. It's a boy. We're going to name him James, after Elizabeth's dad. Not after my dad. When our son asks me someday about his paternal grandparents, I'm going to tell him the truth about his biological grandmother, my mom, who would have been the best grandmother in the world. And I'm going to explain why his paternal grandfather isn't in his life, without lies, without sugarcoating things, because our son deserves to grow up knowing his true history, not a whitewashed version where we pretend everything is fine when it's not. I know there are people who think I'm being extreme, that I should let go of the past, that my dad has a right to know his grandson. But those people don't understand what it's like to have your dead mom erased from your life, to be forced to accept a replacement, to have your pain invalidated because it's inconvenient for them. Those people didn't have to hide photos of their mom under the bed so they wouldn't get thrown away. But those people didn't have to say over and over, I already have a mom, only to be ignored. My son is going to grow up knowing who his grandmother was, seeing her photos, hearing stories about her. He's going to know she was loved, that she was important, that she mattered. And nobody, not my dad or Katherine or anyone, is going to take that away from him. That's my line in the sand, and I'm not moving from there. No matter how many lawyer letters I receive or how many relatives tell me I'm being cruel. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one who has to live with my decisions. And I'd rather live knowing I protected my mom's memory and protected my family from toxic people who don't respect boundaries. Elizabeth tells me I'm doing the right thing, that she's proud of me for holding firm to my boundaries even when it's difficult. Her parents told me I'll always have family with them, that our son is going to have the most loving grandparents in them, and that's enough. That has to be enough. Because family isn't just blood, it's people who respect you, who respect your decisions, who don't try to erase parts of your history because it makes them uncomfortable. My dad chose Katherine over me years ago, and now he has to live with the consequences of that choice. I chose my mom, her memory, my new family, and I'm going to keep choosing them every time.